Hello, and thank you for joining this presentation. And for those of you who will be watching this video at a later time, thank you as well for your time and your interest. My name is Amresh Deshpande, and I am the India Country Manager for Forest Stewardship Council. And I will be talking about how we can manage India's forests more sustainably, both on the supply side, which would be management of forests, as well as the demand side, as in sourcing and use of forests products that would be timber and other wood and other products. But before I begin, I would like to talk about a quote, and this is from the mid 1600s from Santa Tukaram, who lived near the Pune area in India. And the quote says, Vruksha Valli Ama Soyari Vanachare. The trees, the birds, and animals, these are all our friends. And I'm very excited to share that the FSC logo conveys exactly the same message, which says forests are for all forever. The trees, the birds, animals, and of course human beings, we can all live together. Before I move on to today's presentation, I would also like to talk about the paths that we take. And it we can manage our forests and forest products in two different ways. We can be irresponsible, continue with a lot of challenges of illegal logging, rapid deforestation, and just let things go downhill. Or we can actually try and manage our forests in a more responsible fashion, and that is best conveyed by this image from the Bollywood movie Diwar, which is from the mid 1970s. And the reason why I included this image is not just because Shashi Kapoor, who passed away recently, was one of my favorite actors, but also this image conveys the impact of the decision taken by two brothers. One tries to take the wrong path, the other one takes the righteous path, and look at the body languages, and how they are, they are so apart, even though they are so near. That is not the situation that we want to be, and now I would like to move on to the agenda for this presentation. I would talk about FSC, the certifications that we have, what's FSC's presence in India, and also particularly about building sector and forest products, particularly timber. A lot of you are from the architecture and construction side of the industry, and I was in construction and real estate for about 12 years, both in the United States and in India, before I took up this role. And finally, we have some questions in case you have that I could answer. I'm pre-recording this video, so and I'm sure the Eco Hour team would have some way of making sure that I get these questions so that I can respond to them in a timely fashion. About FSC, FSC or Forest Stewardship Council was established in 1993. It's an international nonprofit which has its headquarters in Bonn in Germany, and it's got a presence in multiple countries in the world. I'll talk about in the next slide. It's a membership-based organization, and it's a multi-stakeholder organization. Now, it's very interesting structure that FSC has. You have members, both individuals as well as organizations, and organizations could be businesses, nonprofits, etc. And members come from either the social, environmental, or economic chamber. The structure of FSC is rather complex, but it's proven to be a very successful model, and there are many reports and case studies which have been written about the FSC model, and I would encourage you to take a look at them by visiting the FSC website. Now, FSC over the past 20 years, it's earned a reputation as a very rigorous, it's a very credible forest management system, and it's one of the most trusted forest management systems that it has evolved into. It has a global footprint. If you look at the presence, it's a large presence in North America, Russia, and then also Scandinavia. India is missing in this slide, but I will talk about India specifically in a subsequent slide, so bear with me till then. You may notice here that you have a certain amount of acreage given in million hectares, and then it says, percentage of total forest area. I would like to use the example of Sweden, where it says that 12 million hectares of forests are FSC certified, which is a forestry management certification, and that's 43% of the total forest area. That's a large amount of forests in a particular country which is FSC certified, which means it follows certain management systems, certain best practices while managing the forest resources. Speaking of FSC certifications, like I said, that there are multiple FSC certifications. Forestry management is more on the supply side, managing the forest and forest products, and this could be both timber and non-timber, which would be in Indian context, medicinal herbs. It could be honey, etc. And then also on the demand side, you have FSC on product labels, which could be in consumer goods, it could be in packaging, Tetra Pak, for example, it could be in clothing, viscose, and then also you have FSC controlled wood certification. Eucalyptus in particular could be probably for scaffolding, could be for making pulp, etc. So, what are the advantages of certifications? Well, you got not just economic advantage, but also social and environmental, because the FSC Forest Management certification is pretty comprehensive and it outlines several criteria. One of them is respecting the rights of human beings, the indigenous people who live in and around the forests. It also talks about following the law, law of the land. And speaking of the certification themselves, the process is described in this slide. It could be a little complicated for you to understand when you take a look at it at first. But I would like to give the example of the ISO organization. So ISO has multiple certifications like ISO 9000, ISO 14000, etc. ISO as an organization retains the IP or the intellectual property to these certifications. The actual process of auditing a company, of actually developing or implementing the management systems, the documentation, the reporting structure, etc., that is done by organizations like a TUV, who are a certification body. FSC follows a similar structure. They also have certification bodies, and in India we have about 6 or 7 of them. And the FSC website, India website, is actually being worked on right now. By early February, you would see the list of FSC's certification bodies in India. So coming back to the certification process itself, you have, like I mentioned, different types of certificates. So this process is actually implemented by the certification bodies. One of the common questions we get asked is, why should we go for a certification? What type of certification should we go in for? What is the timeline required, and how much is it going to cost? These are all fantastic questions, and I wish I had a single answer for all of these. But the answer actually depends on the requirement of the organization, the way the organization is structured. So if you have a large organization versus a small organization, on the forest side, if it's a small holder with 5 to 10 acres of land versus you got a large plantation with 20,000 acres of land, the requirements will differ. Of course, the fee structure will differ as well for this case. And also in terms of timeline, if an organization already has robust structures, reporting and management control systems in place, the implementation time may be less compared to an organization where one has to start from scratch. Now, it will also depend on the end use. If you are, as an organization, are in the process of producing paper, uh, then the requirement may be different versus if you are in the business of trading paper, or if you are a pulp supplier to many newsprints, for example. So, depending on who your customer is, then also the certification type of certification will vary. So, I would encourage you to actually visit the FSC website to understand more about the certification process. Now, some of the benefits of the certification process, if you are a timber company, or if you are in the process of in the business of providing products which have the FSC certification, you can command a cost premium, and there are organizations who are willing to pay this cost premium. On the forest management side, I would like to give the example of Tripura Forest Management Corporation, the Development Corporation. The area experienced in Tripura, there is a process, the practice of jhum cultivation, which is you cut down the forest, you burn the ground, and you grow crops on it. Once the soil is no longer productive, you move on. So, actually implementing forest management certification helped in reducing this jhum cultivation practice. The area under jhum cultivation, the people, over 1,200 families, got means of alternative livelihood. And then, of course, the forest area was regenerated. So, this is the social as well as environmental and economic impact of FSC certification, what many organizations refer to as a triple bottom line. Now, in case of UP Forest Corporation, they obtained a certification in 2015. Their original trigger was that they wanted to compete in international markets when they were supplying timber, particularly teak, from Uttar Pradesh, from forests in Uttar Pradesh. And EU, the European Union, and many countries, many organizations in North America have very stringent procurement policies wherein all timber and wood suppliers have to have a sustainable forestry certification, and many of them recommend FSC certifications. That was the trigger for the UP Forest Corporation. Now, the impact was that there were over 20 buyers who wanted to buy this FSC certified timber, and they are willing to pay a premium just because they know now that the wood that they're obtaining, the timber that they're obtaining, is has been harvested sustainably, and it certainly has other social as well as environmental impact. Not just that, there were some other benefits. The fruit trees in and around the forest, plants which are used in Ayurvedic medicines. You can manage those areas much better, as well as promoting ecotourism. So with that, I will talk about FSC in India. We have a presence here since 2000, and over 5 lakh hectares or 500,000 hectares of forest is certified. There are 7 forest management certification holders. I just talked about a couple of them in UP and Tripura. And on the business side, on the demand side, there are about 380 chain of custody holders. So basically, there is a documentation process which is called chain of custody, which essentially documents that the along the different phases, from source for in the forest all the way to the point of consumption, uh, the processes that have been followed for ensuring compliance or adherence with the FSC certification process. So the businesses include both Indian and multinational, large and small. Global brands like Tetra Pak. You got timber companies, you got newsprint companies, and then also packaging organizations. Now, this is great. I think we're off to a good start. But if we look at the big picture, there are over 80 million hectares of forest and tree cover in India, according to the ministry, the forestry report in 2015. So that's like 1/160th of the total forest cover in India. And if we were to translate this into economic terms, and we are working on these metrics, so FSC globally actually has two sets of metrics. One is how many certificate holders you have, and how much land area you have under certification. Now, what does this mean in economic terms? What does this mean in maybe ecological terms? I would love to present more quantifiable data, which I don't have right now, but we are working on that, and maybe in a subsequent conversation, I would love to present more data, and which would be specific to India. That what does this, 500,000 hectares of certified forest mean in economic terms? What is the percentage of certified, products which are procured by these 380 odd organizations versus their total, procurement budget? We are working on that. But in the meantime, let me talk about sustainable wood and building sector, which is I would like to spend a few minutes talking about it because wood is one area, particularly timber. India imports quite a lot of it, and I'll talk more on the next slide on that. But when you're importing wood or timber from outside of India, give preference to certified wood, because then you would know where it is harvested from. Where what was the source of that particular wood? Is the tree mature enough? What was the ecological impact around, in the area where the tree was harvested from? What is the social impact? Were people displaced for logging that particular tree? It will give you a lot more information about it. Similarly, for domestic, why not give preference to producers or suppliers of certified timber or wood? Hopefully these 7 organizations will grow into more number of organizations, and as we focus on, working with organizations which the state-owned forest corporations and other organizations which own, or which have rights to forests, basically, to bridge that gap between 80 million hectares and a half a million hectares, right? If the buyers start giving preference to certified wood, it definitely trigger greater response or interest within the suppliers of wood and wood products. Similarly, for building interiors, furniture, and floors, and then also paper and packaging. Well, construction itself does not use a lot of paper and packaging, but if you could start small, why not institute policies within your organization to source wood, to source paper, which is made from sustainable forests. I would love to say more FSC certified paper, but if you want to go ahead and use any certified paper which is made from sustainable sources, that's a great start. Similarly, the India Green Building Council has a directory of certified wood suppliers, and then of course, as an organization, you can become members of FSC and give more voice, give more India-specific context for driving the activities in this country. Now, sand should be a wake-up call. This is, I wanted to include this and maybe spend a minute talking about the issue of sand. When I was a student in engineering, I learned about ABC analysis in materials management. Sand used to be a C item. It's locally available, abundant, it's cheap. Pilferage, wastage, etc. are not really great issues. But over the past few years, sand has become a big problem, both because of illegal sand mining and mafia and increase in prices. There was a supply issue. Then the government also clamped down because the environmentalists were up in arms because of illegal sand mining. The issue became so severe that certain projects were delayed. There were, around Chennai area, there was talk about importing sand from Indonesia. I mean, who would have thought that a C item could, suddenly become a B item just because of either, not so great practices, not very good or robust policies, and maybe just mismanagement of a resource which is locally available. You did not respect a natural resource, and suddenly it became a problem. The problem could be bigger in case of wood and wood products. We're already importing a lot of it, and let sand be a wake-up call for all of us within those who were or are or associated with the building sector in India, that it's going to get even worse with wood. The reason for that is that illegal logging is a major problem globally. And if you see the wood and wood products imports in India, in terms of rupee value, it's just increasing. Or there was a slight dip a couple of years ago, but it's showing an increasing trend. There are some other statistics, some other data which is showing that actually imports have reduced. But I have actually spent some time understanding the imports for timber, and this particular graph is inconsistent is consistent with the majority of the reports that I've seen, that in terms of rupee value, in terms of volume, the timber imports in India are increasing, and a lot of it is illegal. And this particular chart shows that India is actually the third largest importer of illegal wood in the world, and a lot of it comes from Southeast Asia in particular. And this is a problem. This is a report from Hindustan Times in 2016, last year. So, what is the impact of all this illegal logging that's happening? There is impact on biodiversity. There is an impact on climate change, of course. And I would like to clarify that when you see this annual report, annual import in USD, those are $1 million. I think in the publication they forgot to mention this small detail. So the question is, what is being done about it? What is being done to curb illegal imports globally, right? As from the building sector, like I said, that just take a call that if it is not certified timber, you'll not use it because then that will curb down the illegal import part. What's happening globally is that FAA report in 2015 stated that half of the world's tropical forests have been cleared, which is the bad news. But the good news is many countries are implementing policies, many organizations are implementing policies because of which forest areas are coming under protection, they are managed better, and that has actually slowed down the rate of deforestation or illegal logging globally. So this is the importance of a good forest management practice, and then as a buyer, as a consumer, buying products which are certified. With that, I would like to conclude this presentation. Thank you again for your time. You can reach out to me via email. The FSC India website, like I said, is not yet ready. However, we do have a Google Plus page, and I have provided a link to that. I would love to hear your feedback, any questions that you have that I can answer. I'll be more than happy to do that. With that, thank you once again.